Welcome everybody to yet another coffee time with Hako, the show where I have my morning coffee and then I puff into the void. Well met everybody, today we're having a yerba mate in a dried up pumpkin. So a lot of times I drink coffee, sometimes I drink mate, which is more like South American coffee. Think of it as a blend between coffee and tea. But we're not here to talk about my caffeine habits. Instead, in this coffee time, what is it? I think it's 79. We're going to be talking about Seed. I've not played Seed for around 24 hours on the creator servers, so whenever I reach that point, I usually make a coffee time video with like any new agent and I kind of give you my like first impressions of the character. And now this is going to be my impression of Seed in her current state on the test servers, so you know, changes might apply. So Seed is an upcoming electric attacker character that is part DPS and also part support. She is the first attacker in the game that comes with like substantial buffs. The only attacker agent in the game currently that has any sort of like team-wide buffs is Ambi, and Seed dwarfs these buffs by a lot. She basically brings Astra level of buffs to the team as an attacker, which also makes sense because she's kind of meant to be taking Astra's place in a team. So it is an ambitious undertaking from the developers. It's something new, it's something we haven't really seen before to this scale, and I do like what they're shooting for. And if I had to rate my experience with Seed so far from a scale 1 to 10, where you know 10 is amazing, I'd probably put Seed at a 5. Seed does bring incredibly potent buffs to the team, and in general I see a 5 to 10% increase in like overall team score in the assault, taking out Astra and putting in Seed. Now we are on the higher end if the enemy is weak to electric, and on the lower end and a lot of times being outclassed by Astra if the enemy is resistant to electric. Seed currently on the creator servers feels like she is missing something, and I don't have to scratch my head too hard. I know what she's missing. She is missing Orphe, her intended teammate. Currently in the game, Seed is kind of the best in slot like support or stat stick for any of the attackers except Evelyn and Hugo. So yeah, the two latest attackers, they'd still prefer, in Evelyn's case, Astra or Lighter, and in Hugo's case, you know, two stunners. But if we go further back than Evelyn and Hugo, you know, we have Zombie, we have Ellen, we have Jujuan, and they do fit in quite well with Seed. It still feels like something is kinda missing. Consistently, you will get slightly better results running Seed instead of Astra. And there are also circumstances where, you know, taking out the team stunner and slotting in Seed and Astra is the better option to do, but usually like the hallmark of attackers is that they kind of want a stunner because they work most of their magic in a stun window. And kind of the core principle behind a Seed team is Seed expending her resources, giving energy to her vanguard like partner up attacker, that partner up attacker expending energy, giving steel charge to Seed, and like there you have your loop. Now in my personal opinion, this loop does not feel super great, super well oiled on any of the current cast. It does work decently with some of the existing attackers like Ambi or Yugen or Ellen for example, but in Ambi's case, you know, so much of Ambi's own potential is kind of wasted because Seed doesn't have any aftershock. The team gets elevated quite a bit if Trigger is like the third option in this team because Trigger does work off Zombie's buffs. And arguably that's right now her best team, depending on the content. Now where Orphe comes in and changes this is that she is going to be the first attacker character that has aftershock attacks that happens once the character is switched out. Because all of the attackers that we have in the game currently, when you switch them out, they do nothing. Seed is unique, she is fun, she is probably one of the most unique characters that we've had so far. There's some really cool animations and like thoughts put into her, and she brings with her an entire new way that we like play attackers, which I do commend her for. But with the consistent cast of attackers, I don't feel like she, you know, really feels super great with any of them. And now I don't have access to Orphe on the creator server yet. That is going to happen like a week and a half into Seed's banner, so I have not been able to test her out with Orphe yet, but I can imagine that like that is the team that is really gonna kick off. So my initial impression of testing Seed for around a day is that they've given her very broadly applicable buffs that basically slots in well on any existing attacker. And I think we'll see with Orphe's release that there is like quite a lot of hidden potential that we only see come onto Seed when paired up together with Orphe. So, from my initial impressions, when should you debating going for Seed? Well, obviously number one, and ladies and gentlemen, this is a big one. If you like Seed, they put a lot of love into Seed. She's very cool, she has unique animations, and she gets her little Segway to like run around on, and when you're like just roaming out in new Eridu, which is kind of cool. I know a lot of people were anticipating Seed from like the very early days of the game, and now Seed is finally here, and she's a very like an incredibly capable buffer. She is able to provide extra levels of support and buffs to your attackers. The caveat is that it only works with your attackers. Also, an important thing that I think is kind of important to like take note of is that Seed's buff is explicitly for her and her Vanguard. So a usual team is attacker, Seed, and a stunner. The stunner will not receive any of Seed's buffs, which the stunner would in the case of having Astra. Now, for a lot of characters that doesn't really matter, but we have some, but we do have some stunners that are capable of dealing an incredible amount of damage if they're built right, like Trigger and Lighter. Now, a well-built Lighter in an Evelyn team, for example, is responsible for around 20% of the damage, and a Trigger together with a zombie, like a Soldier Zombie, can be responsible for up to 40% of the team's damage. So robbing the stunner of that buff, it does have some impact. So number one, you really like the character. Number two, why would you, consider pulling for Seed? Well, like I said, she provides extra levels of buff to your attackers, which is, nothing to scoff at all. Number three, you like new things. Seed is the new shiny thing, and she also brings like a new shiny way to play attacker, which, as someone that has like a very attacker loaded account, like my attackers are probably, they are more invested than my anomaly characters, for example. She does spice up the meta quite a bit in those teams. My one wish would have been that, it would have felt more natural and more well-oiled with other attackers that isn't Orphe. Number four, you need a capable electric DPS. I'd say electric is probably one of the elements that is like the worst element to not have capable agents of. Because we do have all of the annoying robots that puts on really freaking annoying shields, and we can't do anything until that shield is gone. And usually the best way to get rid of them is doing electric damage and making the enemy shocked. We can also stun them. And Seed is both a carry and a support, like all packed into one. So if you're lacking electric and you really need an electric carry, she's not a bad idea to go for. Okay, now let's turn it all around. When should you maybe not consider pulling for Seed? Well, number one, you don't like Seed. So basically the first argument for why you should pull, but now the argument for why you shouldn't pull, and take all of my arguments for that and then you swip them around. You don't like Seed, you don't like the character, etc, etc. Don't. Your account will be super fine not pulling for Seed, and it will be fine if you do go ahead and pull for her. But if you're a regular viewer of this channel, you probably know, this spiel by now. Don't pull for characters you don't want. The best way to have fun in the game is pull for fun characters that you yourself find fun and you find fun using. You like the design, you like the voice acting, etc. Go for those. If she doesn't spark anything in you, don't go ahead and meta pulling for her, because she is not as meta-defining as some other agents have been. Number two, you're not planning to go for Orphe. Like, I think Seed and Orphe is gonna be super capable together. Outside of Orphe, I do feel like Seed is leaving, a lot of potential on the table. And Seed is able to, provide extra levels of buff to your attackers, like slightly better. But, it is a lot of pull investment for a slightly better upgrade in all cases there isn't Orphe. Now, I can fully see that, there's going to be attackers in the future that might synergize even better than Orphe will with Seed. That is a high possibility. But if that is the case, we can always get them on the rerun banner. Right now, from my initial testing, it's a slight upgrade from, Astra. Nothing mind-blowing. Number three. I think we're on number three, right? Two was if you don't have Orphe. Yeah, number three. If you don't, you don't really enjoy attackers, you don't have a lot of attackers, and maybe you're not planning to pick up a lot of attackers. I think it's fairly common that people either pivot into mostly having anomaly agents or mostly having attacker agents, and I think attackers are usually the one left behind, and people, like, if they pivot and focus on one of them, I think they mostly focus on anomaly agents for a varied amount of reasons. Seed relies on being paired up with another capable attacker agent in order to shine herself. And obviously, if you don't have that and you're not planning on having that, saving for someone else might be the smart choice. Number four, what should we call this? More interesting characters coming up ahead. The 2.3 patch is gonna bring with it 3 new characters. We're gonna get Manato on Lucia's banner, and then Yidari is dropping on the second half, and it's gonna be like our second ever S-rank Rupture Agent. And possibly Lucia is a designated Rupture support, maybe. And she's also gonna come paired with Manato, which I'm hoping is gonna be, you know, good. It may well be that that duo is a more potent duo than the Orphan Seed duo. You know, we can speculate, I don't know. I personally think that Seed and Orphe are gonna feel great together. I think it's gonna be like an Evelyn and Asta situation where, you know, they just feel right. One thing that they have going against them is that one of them is electric, another one of them is fire. Quite a lot of enemies will be weak to one of those, and then like resistant to the other one. So weak against electric, strong against fire, and vice versa. Now this creates a little bit of a, you know, a bottleneck when it comes to a Seed team, where Seed is meant to be doing around half of the lifting in that team. Now I think that kind of sums up my initial impression of Seed from the creator beta server in her current state. It is an incredibly ambitious character, and I think together with Orphe it's gonna feel absolutely goddamn amazing. And some small personal gripes I have with Seed is that her kit is a little bit weird. She gets a new disc set that increases basic attack damage by 55%, which is great for basic attacks, and a lot of Seed stuff is basic attacks. But she also has quite a hard-hitting EX special, and she has by far the hardest hitting ultimate in the entire game. This new disc set does nothing for EX special, and it does nothing for, you know, the very hard-hitting ultimate. And she is probably what I would call a little bit clunky with extremely lengthy animations on a lot of the stuff she does, which, you know, does make sense because she's a big-ass robot. And I think paired up together with Orphe and, say, Trigger, where a lot of stuff keeps happening, even if you're locked into lengthy animations, you know, it's gonna feel more fine than it does currently. So everybody, these are my thoughts from 24 hours of testing with Seed. My opinions, they might change when I master Seed more, and since this is from my experience of her on the test servers, there is also a high chance that changes to her kit, to her stats, to her gameplay, etc. might happen before she reaches the live servers. And before she comes to live servers, I will make a more informed video like this once I've tried her out for a few more days to see if my points still stand, and also if I've changed my opinion on anything. And the main point behind my videos is to, you know, make you more informed so you can make a more informed decision of the choices you can make in the game. I'm trying to make it so that you never have to buy the pig in the bag, as we say it in Sweden. Everybody, as always, thank you so much for watching, have a big hug, and until next time, Hako out.